Welcome to Question Time. Tonight we're in Hackney in London. On tonight's panel, Suella Braverman, Attorney General for England and Wales, former Brexit
Braverman? I also pronounced Braverman.
Minister and Chair of the European Research Group of Tory MPs. Shabana Mahmood, a Birmingham MP since 2010, previously Shadow Minister under Ed Miliband, now National Campaign Coordinator for the Labour Party. Comedian, writer and political commentator Jeff Norcott. Miatta Farnbullah, economist and chief...
Like, Jeff Norcott is, like, supposed to be like right-wing comedy. I always thought it was just supposed to be like a parody. Just like a piss take of like rightoids, and apparently he's actually serious. He's been at that like free speech stand-up thing, the embarrassing thing they did in London. Hayden Prowse organised that, I think.
Executive at the left-leaning New Economics Foundation, and Formula One racing driver, currently with Aston Martin, 4 times world champion and the youngest driver to hold the title, Sebastian Vettel.
Seems like an odd choice. Have Sebastian Vettel hosting your politics. Well, let's see how he does.
Good evening. Welcome to my panel. Welcome to the audience here in Hackney. Great to see you. And of course, welcome to you at home as well. Do join in the conversation in the usual way on social media at BBC Question Time. Let's hear what you've got to say. OK, our first question tonight is from Daniel Truen.
With the cost of living continuing to increase and reports that 1.5 million households will soon see food and energy bills exceed their disposable income, when is the right time for the government to intervene?
Shabana.
Well, Daniel, the government should have already intervened. They've literally just done the Queen's Speech, which is their legislative programme, that is to say the laws that they want to make for our country in this next parliamentary session, and they've got nothing in it to deal with the cost of living crisis, which is the #1 concern of pretty much every household all over the country. It's an absolute disgrace. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor could have taken steps just a few months ago in the spring statement to deal with the cost of living crisis, to ease the burden of that cost of living crisis on working families all over the country. They did nothing. They could have done something ahead of the local elections. We've just had those a few days ago as an offer to the people of this country to say, you know what, we're on your side, we're going to help you all out. They did nothing. And now they just had the Queen's Speech. And there's nothing in that to help people all over this country deal with the #1 crisis that is facing this country. It's an absolute disgrace. All we've had from the Chancellor today is a little bit of leaning into the possibility that he might take some action on a windfall tax. So oil and gas producers in our country are making billions of pounds worth of extra profits, money that they have themselves said that they don't know what to do with. And we have been calling for months now that the government should have a one-off windfall tax on these oil and gas producers, on their excess profits, and they should put that money towards taking up to £600 off everybody's bills. That is an offer that they should have stolen our idea, and they should have already stolen it and put it in the Queen's Speech.
Yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating listening to people from the Labour Party just say, why don't we have a windfall tax? And the compromise position for that is the Conservatives do literally fucking nothing, rather than having specific taxes so that are laser focused on the industries that are continuous, rather than just a singular windfall tax, because they're high profit levels. They're not just going to stop; they're going to continue to increase and go up as oil supplies become a little less plentiful and become more sparse. So we're going to need to tax them more to be able to make sure that we keep down the amount to which they can fleece members of this country for money for things that they have no choice but to otherwise pay for. Because you can't just not have a house without electricity, right? You have to have electricity in the house. Why don't we either actually put a targeted tax on them, or even better, bring them under public control? And then even if you're trying to negotiate on some kind of policy with the Conservatives in Parliament, if you go in with why do a really small windfall tax, and they say, okay, we're going to compromise with you and say no, you go in. You can tell I'm working fucking sales, right? You go in and say you should have a targeted specific tax on oil gas producers specifically that's continuous, and they go, hang on, we'll compromise down to just a windfall tax, and then you can actually get that passed through Parliament, right?
Well, look, I'm a natural Conservative voter. I've voted Conservative since 2010, but the last election, I didn't vote Conservative. I spoiled my ballot paper. I wasn't ready for the alternatives. But, I think Labour talking about a windfall tax, if you're looking for a solid left-wing policy, it's a one-off thing. It doesn't really solve what we're told are going to be ongoing higher prices.
And not just a left-wing policy, Conservative government.
Yeah, and I think it's got popular support. I think a lot of people would support it, but I think it's a one-off. What I'd say to Suella is the Conservative Party seem absolutely terrified of doing Conservative things. Why is VAT still at 20%? That was supposed to be an emergency rate. You could cut that. That would immediately put money back in people's pockets.
Yeah, why is the incredibly regressive tax that the Conservatives did to be able to reduce aggregate demand? Why is that? Why are they not doing that Conservative thing? I'm like, that is a Conservative policy. Them engaging in regressive tax to be able to reduce the spending power of the consumer classes. That's an explicitly Conservative policy. just because you think that all tax rises that ever happen are always a left-wing policy. That's not the case. The left-wing platform is a progressive taxation platform where you target the top, right? Who do you think tried to institute the poll tax, for example? It's not difficult to look at. Whereas you look at, for example, the current Conservative government, who actually reduced, they actually reduced and got rid of a levy on bank transactions. So we're paying higher amounts with their aggressive taxation by having higher VAT, by increasing tax on national insurance. We're paying much higher prices for us and the members of the working class right now because those are aggressive taxation methods. And then they're also reducing taxes on the people who caused the fucking financial crisis. So, if anything, this is the epitome of conservative taxation policy. It really is.
Why are we raising corporation taxes? We're coming out of the EU and out of a pandemic and making ourselves less attractive to business. And why don't you bring forward this income tax cut? You've already announced it. Bring it forward, because these are things, I think, that will put money back in people's pockets. And right now, that's what people need.
Okay, Suella, I'll come to you in a moment. Let's hear from our audience first. Yes.
You mentioned the windfall tax. Surely that windfall tax should be going, yes, to the people that need it, but also we should be using that money and investing that in sustainable energy so that we don't have these price hikes.
Okay.
True and based from that audience member.
Man there in the glasses.
I think the national insurance increase, which was implemented earlier last month, that should be reversed out. The 1.25% increase. Plus, I think the government needs to tax the online sales tax, for example, Amazon or the Google, for example. These multi-corporations, they're hardly paying any taxes.
Okay, man here in the check shirt.
Yes, I think that these big companies or these energy companies that are making a lot of profits during difficult times, I think the government should solicit help from them to help people facing hardships. And apart from that, we also have other issues like climate change, things that requires a lot of upfront cost, like a lot of investment. So I think we need all these energy companies that are making a lot of profits during this time to actually chip in to support the economy and help people and the environment.
Okay.
And it's correct in that loads of the issues that we do have are issues that require a lot of initial investment capital, a lot of startup investment into them to be able to actually get them off the ground. Because these are big infrastructure projects that need to be done to solve a lot of incredibly pressing issues like climate, like the housing crisis. That involves a lot of initial investment, which no government wants to do because they're so, you can't balance the books, because people think that the economy is like some household budget, when it obviously doesn't really function like that. But they continually say, or they continue to kind of kick the can down the road with, plaster policies that don't really solve the issue because they don't actually fix the kind of rot at the heart of the system. They just continue plastering over it until we have something that doesn't actually look anything like a proper policy platform, because they don't want to be the first person to go ahead we're going to put the investment in and we're going to put the money in right here, right now. Sure, we'll take a loss right now, but that infrastructure will continue to pay dividends in the future.
Yeah.
Sebastian.
Well, I think there's exactly the same debate and the same questions. They are very fair being asked in Germany, and certainly the latest developments with the situation in the Ukraine, with the war in the Ukraine, have sparked a lot of talk, because the energy prices have, the energy prices have gone up, and therefore people have less money in their pockets, which I think is very easy and clear to understand. Now the question is, what do you do with it and how do you fix it? And I think it's a bit of a bigger picture thing. In truth, it's probably fair to say that action should have been taken a long time ago already, and we shouldn't depend on prices that basically the UK or Germany or any country doesn't dictate. It's the prices that we and people and households all over the UK, Germany, other countries depend on. So I think there's a really ongoing and interesting debate, and certain terms or certain certain things have been mentioned, like how do we source our energy? Where do we get our energy from? And I think it's pretty similar in the UK. You have a mixture of gas, coal, and oil. And it's the same in Germany. Obviously, Germany is very dependent on Russia and now potentially in trouble. What do we do with it? Is there going to be an embargo? How do we go forward? What do we do if Russia turns the tap off? A lot of questions. But the truth is that we should have tackled these dangers and threats already a long time ago. We shouldn't be as dependent. And we have to shift into the next gear and get ready for the future, not just for the reason of becoming independent and protecting these households that we're speaking about, but also to look after the bigger picture and making sure that we live on a planet that is as enjoyable to tomorrow as it is today.
And do you think Germany should?
That's the big issue, right? Is the reason why these prices are going up? Why the scarcity of these. I'm going to start that bit again. Sorry. So the reason why we are so dependent on these particular industries is obviously because we've spent so much time specifically investing in them, especially things like fossil fuels, where these have been a cornerstone of our energy generation and the world's energy generation for decades and decades and decades and decades, right? And now, because we've had 40 years, we've had 40 years to prepare for the ongoing climate breakdown, right? These have been things that we've been talking about for an incredibly long time. And actual initial large amounts of investment at the start into renewable energy sources that aren't going to rely on huge amounts of natural resources that you continue to have to import from foreign nations, because we don't have it to be able to import within our own borders to be able to do that, especially now all the mines got fucking closed, right? Where's the nuclear? Where's solar? Where's wind? Where's all these things where you have initial investment and that pays dividends down the line, but having to rely on additional natural new non-renewable resources that we have to import from other nations? So all of this energy dependency issue that we have going on is just a damning indictment of every single government's complete failure to properly address the issue of climate change.
Since you're talking about Ukraine, do you think Germany should cut off Russian gas?
You know, it's a very tricky one, because obviously you don't want to provoke Russia to act in a way that, you know, has consequences on all of us.
And Germany is so dependent on Russian gas.
And Germany is so dependent. So the truth is we're far too dependent, and there's exactly the debate, like how far do you go? Is it actually possible to turn off the tap tomorrow? Probably yes for a while, because now the summer is coming, but what do you do next winter? We don't have gas terminals to storage gas, for example. So yeah, as I said, in truth, I think now it's a bit late to raise these concerns, because I think there's a lot of people that you know, have raised these concerns a long time ago. And you know, the energy that we use today, we are far, as I said, too dependent, and we should think of energy like peace energy or freedom energy, which is renewable energies. So that's, I think, the future, not just for an independent way of protecting households and protecting people that can't afford to pay the bills, but also to shift, as I said, into the future.
Suella, lots of suggestions you're hearing from the panel, from the audience, as to what could be done about the cost of living. There was a meeting of the Cabinet in Stoke today to discuss the cost of living. You were there, I think.
I was, yes.
So what did you come up with?
Well, I don't comment on private meetings, although we did have some cameras there, actually.
Well, were any of these suggestions that you were hearing here, did any of those get any support?
Well, listen, I mean, no one's going to sugarcoat the reality. Times are tough. Everyone is facing challenges when it comes to the cost of living. Food prices are going up, energy bills are rising, and that's because of a variety of factors. Inflation is rising, not just in this country, in the US and the EU, they're seeing similar patterns. And we're also dealing with the aftershock of COVID and the huge amounts of expenditure that we put in, rightly, to support the country through those difficult times.
And the question is, when is the right time for the government to intervene?
Right. Well, Shabana's been a bit disingenuous, and you know, we've already intervened. We've put forward a £22 billion package to help people, particularly families on the lowest income, through these challenges. Nothing's off the table, and we're always going to be considering what more we can do. But whether it is raising the national living wage, whether it's the household support fund, whether it's the £150 rebate to help with energy bills, whether it's the cut and the freeze.
You've put £150 into an energy rebate, have you? Oh, brilliant. Well, that has cleared me off of the increase in price from one singular energy bill. Brilliant. Great. So you've covered me for the next energy bill. What's going to happen when, as we've seen from the ONS, when they're predicting the prices to rise even further by the end of the year, and Ofgem are going to put the cap up again? What are you going to do then? It's not sustainable. Just say, well, we gave you all £150. I can't believe you're not happy with our incredibly meagre attempt at trying to solve this incredibly difficult crisis.
To fuel duty. These things all add up. Thousands of pounds can be saved by the average family. A single mother on the national living wage with 2 children who's renting will actually be £1,600 better off this year compared to last year because of these cumulative changes. Can I finish? Can I just finish? And I think so.
Even with inflation running it up to 10%.
No, the reality is that we are taking into account inflation, and these changes.
So hang on, people are laughing when you're saying that, Sue. I just wonder what your response is.
The reality is there's a massive.
Good. They should be laughing.
Massive package of measures designed to help those on the lowest income so that they can get through these difficult times. Would I love to do more? Of course I would. But we've also got to work within our means. We've got to pay for the backlogs in the NHS, and we've got to invest in our social care. But equally, we need to ensure that we want to keep taxes down. To Jeff's point, I'm a Conservative because I want to keep more of your money in your pockets, not the government's. And we do want to ensure that we push taxes down. And
you put up national insurance. You literally put up taxes on the most, in such a way as to overwhelmingly affect the poorest people in the fucking country by putting up national insurance. Come on.
On Shabana's point about the windfall tax, I just have to answer this
you
point.
are literally making numbers
Windfall
up.
tax.
You are literally making numbers up.
The windfall tax is not. I mean, the government has made clear, Prime Minister and Chancellor have said they're considering all options. But I just want to challenge Labour's proposal. They want headlines because they're desperate to say something on this subject. They don't have anything else to say. Rachel Reeves has made clear they're only going to raise £1.2 billion from their proposed windfall tax. With 28 million households, that works out at £42 per household. It's peanuts. £600 again. Rachel.
I hate to admit, but Suella is correct. Suella is correct that it is indeed peanuts, because Rachel Reeves is somebody who hasn't got a brain, who doesn't know what the fuck she's doing, and her ability with which to be able to generate some effective policy to be able to deal with an incredibly heavy crisis that deals with... and her ability to be able to actually create policies to deal with such a large crisis is completely fucking inept, and the fact that she is Shadow Chancellor is, quite frankly, a fucking embarrassment. But then again, what else would we get from Keith Starmer? No policies, no vision, no help, no nothing. Just saying we're not the Tories and then using that as some kind of electoral facade. Because it doesn't fucking wash. And for once, I hate to admit that Suella Braverman is completely correct. And the Labour plans that they have proposed aren't good enough. They're just not good enough, especially not for someone who's supposed to be the opposition.
Reeves has accepted that will only reach a minority of households. So let's make sure that if we are going to apply windfall tax, that we make sure it works and it gets to the people who really need it.
Look, when you top up all the measures that the government has put in place, families, on average, are still £1,100 worse off. So your numbers are literally made up. They're literally made up.
It's true, like, she's trying to convince us it's not raining on our face, right?
You know, the analysis that we've done at the New Economics Foundation suggests that this year, 1 in 3 households and half of all our children are going to struggle to afford bread and butter things, are going to have to make day-to-day sacrifices just to stay afloat. And it doesn't feel like the government has grasped the scale of the challenge, because if you had, you would have acted by now. And you talk about the lowest families. The Chancellor took £1,000 from those families last year, and then in the spring statement that we just had, there was literally not a single measure that would support families on the lowest incomes in this country. And there are things that you could do to act, and you're choosing not to, but there are things that you could do. So that windfall tax is a legitimate thing that you could do. Use that to bear down on bills for the next year to 18 months, whilst we have a Great Homes Upgrade, a national programme of home insulation, so we can insulate millions of homes over the next 3 years, and then you combine that with a £15 billion package to boost the benefits, so that families that are at the sharp end of this crisis, that the Chancellor has left to languish, where people are moving well beyond the choice of heating your home or feeding your kid. They're not doing either. And for me, when we have families on the brink, when we have children going into destitution, when 2 million people in the richest country in the world are skipping meals because they can't afford it, the fact you're not acting, I think, is unforgivable.
True. It's utterly disgraceful. And she's correct in saying that they're choosing not to act. It's an ideological position of theirs not to act. I talked about it on the last show and talked about Jack Monroe. This is social murder. This is what it is. Killing people through policy. There's no other way of describing it.
A lot of hands up. Let's hear from the woman in the orange top. Yes, there.
Yeah, hello. My name is Fatou. I live here. I'm a single mom, and I also own a business. And when you mentioned, well, we're going to be better off, I don't know where you got all those statistics, but I can tell you, I run a social enterprise, and at the moment, we definitely worse off. The thing is, there's more people going on universal credit, working moms going universal credit, because we cannot afford to rent our houses here, because the renting, the houses rent is so high, and there's nothing we can do. I'm not talking even about the childcare issue, because at the moment, the government wants us to go back into work. However, the childcare cost is so high and there is no help on this either. And do you know that also there is more people, working people, that actually going to food banks now nowadays as well?
I'll let you back in a minute. No, let me just hear from all the others. I'll let you back in.
And that's a big point too, is that of course this government's done nothing to control the skyrocketing housing and rental costs, because of course they're all fucking 26% of Tory MPs in the House of Commons are landlords. So they have a vested interest in keeping houses and prices and rent prices high. There's been no talk of anything to do with rent capping, no talk of anything to do with additional social housing. No, it's all just like, we're going to, remove some red tape so that some developers can build some more with some nice houses, like Michael Gove was saying. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't really give a shit about whether the homes are beautiful or not. I care about there being lots of them. There being public housing that isn't going to be at the mercy of the landlord class deciding how much extra value that they extract from the wealth of their tenants every single fucking month for the grand job of owning shit. That's what we need from the Conservative government. They do nothing. They take no action at all. Because, again, they have an entirely vested interest in doing so.
The woman in the green top here.
You mentioned about the Conservative government wanting to keep money in our own pockets, but like one of the panellists said, VAT has been at 20%. That was supposed to be a temporary measure. Why haven't they brought that back? Also, are politicians out of touch with humans? Because, to the general public? Because we had, last week, we had one politician say we should be buying value-branded supermarket products. And this week, we've got another politician telling us the only reason we're using food banks is because we don't know how to cook. How out of touch are the politicians?
The man there in the blue shirt and the jacket in the middle there, yes.
Yes, so I think the answer to the question, the original question, is actually now. Now, we need to do something now about it. My stepdaughter and my grandson are obviously a single parent on benefits down in the South Coast, and her electric and her gas has quadrupled over the space of, what, a month? It's ridiculous. She's struggling so hard, and it's us, my wife and I, who are sort of helping her or them out and keeping them afloat, when we shouldn't really be doing that. We should be looking after ourselves, surely.
Okay, the woman next to you in the glasses.
Yeah, we know that children who experience adverse experiences when they're younger equates to trauma. So we've got children that are living in poverty now who are looking at their parents struggling, who are looking at the mental health difficulties their parents are going through. Everything that's happening to these children now is just going to affect them later on. I'm a CAMS nurse. I work in child and adolescent mental health. And the stress that these children are under because their parents are under so much stress is outrageous. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that the Tory government are not able to see this and put the funding where it's needed. And I also just wanted to say that the Tory government need to actually be truthful about the things that they are putting in place. So this £150 rebate that people are getting, it's not a rebate, it's a loan, and yet the Tory government still say it's not a loan, but I wouldn't expect anything less from a Tory party who's got a leader who lies all the time anyway, so...
All right, Suella,
I couldn't put it better myself, although it's the council tax rebate that is actually rebate. You are getting money back from the council tax. It's the discount on bills that gets repaid over the next... it's a discount on one set of bills that then gets paid back in instalments a year down the line or something.
You come back in.
Well, I mean, with respect to the lady who talked about childcare, it's not fair to say there's absolutely no help for childcare costs. We pay millions of pounds every year for 15 hours or 30 hours of free childcare for 3- and 4-year-olds. There are hundreds of thousands of families who actually are not aware of it or they don't take it up. I would take, with respect again...
Well, that's your fault for not promoting it. If they don't know that it exists, that's your fault. You're in government. It's your explicit role, it's your job to do the things and then tell the public whether they do or don't exist. You need to promote it to people. Otherwise, what you could literally do is what this government is currently doing, is saying they're spending a bunch of money creating these schemes to help people, not telling anybody about them, and go, oh, well, it's your own fault that you didn't go to the scheme that we didn't promote or tell you about. So, if you don't go searching across every single government website that we have to find this thing that's in small print that we said that we actually spent money on, then we can't be blamed for that.
The lady with the green top, there are many people. I meet them in my surgery and in my constituency who are not aware of things which are available to them, which will help with the cost of living. So whether it's childcare, whether it's free school meals, whether it's, as I say, hardship funds. If you're
the free school meals that you tried to take away, and a multi-millionaire footballer had to go on a public campaign for a month to try and get you to reinstate.
On universal credit, there are a large number of schemes that you can access. Cheaper broadband. There are about 4 million people in this country who are not accessing the funding provided by the government that will help them save £140 a year on their broadband. There are funds for heating, there are funds for water bills. There are loads of things that you can access if you have the knowledge. And to the lady about the food banks, I think the point which was being made by my colleague about food banks was an important one, actually, which is this. There is a real need for many people, and it's not a stereotype, and it's not a stigma, and it's not a slur, for all of us to learn better and smarter techniques to save money, whether that's cooking more at home or whether that's getting a meter which will regulate how much energy you're using so you know what your expenditure is on your energy bills, whether it's, as I say, accessing some of these funds which are available through your local authority. I've come across too many people now who are not aware of the household
that's not
support
acceptable.
fund. We've doubled that to millions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds, which will go directly to some of the poorest people in this community who can access it through their local authority.
Okay,
not many people know about that.
I'm sorry, Suella. People at the sharp end of the cost of living crisis have already made all the changes that they can possibly make. They're already buying value brand goods. They're already buying the yellow sticker food. We've heard about pensioners who go out all day on the bus so that they're at home and using energy at home that they're then going to have to pay for. So the people at the sharp end of this crisis are already taking every step possible. It's time that the government showed that it will be on their side. Have a windfall tax, give people immediate relief with some money off their bills, and then make the long-term changes that are needed to help our economy be more sustainable in some of the...
Shut up about the windfall tax. It's not good enough. It won't do enough.
The ways that Sebastian suggested earlier on. It's all a government choice. At the end of the day, the government can act, it can do more, it chooses not to.
Okay. Yeah, very brief, because I want to move on.
Suella, do you actually think the government's doing enough? Just yes
Can
or
the
no? Do you
government
think
do more?
do you think the government is doing enough?
As a
Yes or
politician,
no?
I meet people who are struggling to pay their
It's just
bills.
a yes
I
or
get
no.
it and I
It's just a
understand
yes or
it.
no
I would
answer.
love to
Do you
do
think
more.
the government's
I would
doing
love
enough?
to do more, but we have to make sure we do it in a sustainable way. We've got huge amounts of debt that we are paying already. It's not fair always to raise taxes.
Poor people have to die because otherwise the line goes down. We can't have the line go down, otherwise that's bad. It doesn't matter how many poor people have to die to keep the line going up, but unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
The thing. We have to really challenge this assumption that we should just tax. That doesn't help wealth creation. That doesn't help job creation. That doesn't help people aspire.
Lies. Not true.
And share the proceeds of growth and invest in public services.
Nonsense, nonsense.
40 years got the highest tax burden. So don't sit there and say that the reason why there is a problem is because people are being taxed too much, or the problem isn't fixing it with taxing people. Then the Labour Party is saying to tax people, you are charging the highest amount of tax to this country. That is your fault.
Let me let someone else talk, Jeff.
I think the gentleman makes a fair point. And I ask this in an open spirit, Shabana. Is obviously, you talk about my problem with the windfall tax is that it is just this one-off thing and people's bills are ongoing. The thing with VAT is that is ongoing. That's money back in everyone's pocket. And I would also say to Suella, when people are on a budget, you spend that money. Right? If you're worried about people saving it, the cost of not doing something now in the form of a deep recession will cost you more in the long run. So I think also, would the Labour Party consider a cut to 20%? I just don't know if there's a position on it.
So
Briefly, Siobhan, because then I want to move on.
So we made the proposal on the windfall tax because the oil and gas producers themselves say they're making so much money they don't know what to do with it. Just a moment.
No, just answer that, because then I'm going to move on.
Well, look,
is there any position?
No, we will consider all options.
Okay, you'll
about to form
consider
the
it.
government.
Okay.
But, you know, at the
That'll
moment,
do
windfall
it.
tax, that's the way to help people.
You don't have a position on it, but you'll consider it. Okay, I'm going to move on. But before I do, I just want to tell you where we'll be next week, which is Liverpool. And the following week, we will be in...
Oh, I really wanted some more audience questions on that, because they were all fucking champing at the bit. I would have been champing at the bit. I would have fucking torn Suella Braverman a new one. Fucking hell. What an arrogant piece of shit. What an absolutely rancid human she is.